Good morning. Welcome once again to Working. Today I'm running around looking at jobs. We're kind of in between some major jobs. We've got some big things starting up pretty soon. We have a really big driveway that we're going to be starting next week. I think it's over a $50,000 job. Not that we get that $50,000. A lot of that goes to the excavator. We have to rip out an old driveway, excavate, grade the whole thing, and then we're putting in a brand new driveway, but it's very large. I think it's over 4,000 square feet. So that's going to be a really big job. And then we're going to be starting 12 foundations in June as well. So a lot of big stuff coming up you're going to be seeing on the channel. But today, since I'm running around, I'm not really doing any actual work. I mean, technically I'm working, but it's not stuff that I really need to show you. I thought this would be a good opportunity to answer some of your questions. I get questions all the time on my videos. Some I usually just try to answer through the comment section on YouTube, but I picked out some interesting ones that I thought might be good for me to address on an episode like this. And I'll do this every once in a while. Whenever I get a good selection of questions, I will do an episode. We're gonna have a train here in a minute. I will do an episode where I answer those questions. So there's a lot of extraneous noise going on here. There will be a train going by here pretty soon, but we'll just have to try to edit around that, and hopefully you'll be able to hear what I'm saying. I did want to mention, my boss pointed this out to me, and it's actually a good point. If you are in Whatcom County in Washington State and you were looking for concrete work, we are Contech Concrete Construction. I will put a link to the website, and I will start including a link to the website in all of my videos. Oh boy, here comes a train. He pointed out to me that it was kind of ridiculous to be posting these videos and okay. Can you hear me? He pointed out that it's kind of ridiculous for me to be posting these videos and then not having a link to our website. So of course I will start doing that in these episodes. And if you are in Washington and Whatcom County, we don't really travel outside of Whatcom County, and you would like us to do a job for you, check the link in the description below. Anyway, with all the noise, with the sun shining upon me, it's actually been super windy and rainy and just pretty crappy for late spring here in the Pacific Northwest, but we do have a rare sunny day today. Let's get into some of these questions. I have written them down here. These have been coming in for the last few months, really. The first one I've got, this is from @NightTrainPiper. This is actually a much shorter train than usual. Okay, I think we're good. This is from @NightTrainPiper. NightTrainPiper says, do you use different formulas for concrete depending on different situations? The answer to that is yes. We use a different formula pretty much every single pour. It always is context dependent. So if we're pouring something that is outdoor concrete, like a sidewalk or a driveway, something like that, that's just a standard broom finish. You've seen that on the channel before, where we just use a broom to finish the concrete at the end. That will typically have air in it. You put air in the mix. That way it leaves bubbles when the concrete cures out, so that it won't freeze as easily when it's outside. We have frost here. It's the Pacific Northwest. It does get below freezing in the winter, so you need to make sure you have air. There's also something called, I don't know how technical we want to get here, but you'll have your sack mix for each load of concrete. So that's basically just how many bags of Portland cement you have in the concrete per yard of concrete. So Portland cement is the actual cement portion of the concrete. Concrete is sand, gravel, cement, and then other additives, other chemicals. On a typical outdoor, just driveway that's not going to have huge amount of weight on it, you would have a 5 sack per yard mix. Sometimes you'll do 5.5 sack. If we're doing a hard trowel finish, the kind of finish where we use that power trowel machine, you want more concrete, you want a higher proportion of concrete, so we might do 5.5 or 6 sack for that. That gets more cream to the top cream being just the pure cement and not with all the aggregate. So if you're doing a hard trowel finish, you want more actual cement in there so you can finish it more tightly on the top. We also have different additives. In the winter, we will have accelerant, a non-chloride accelerant that helps the concrete set up more quickly in colder temperatures. Often in the summer, if it's really hot, we will have a retardant that makes it so the concrete will set up less quickly. We use water reducer sometimes. Sometimes we use all sorts of different chemicals. Sometimes there's integral color that we put in there. There are different sizes of aggregate, the actual rocks that are inside the concrete. If we're doing a sand finish concrete pour, then we use a different kind of mix. If we're doing pervious concrete, all sorts of different kinds of mixes. It just depends on what you're doing. So thanks for that question. We have another one here. This is from Glenn. This is kind of a big one, and it's an interesting one. I had to think about this a little bit. Has anything ever gone majorly wrong during a pour, and what do you do when that happens? For the most part, obviously, you're always trying to make sure that nothing goes majorly wrong. So the only thing I can think of that could go really wrong during a pour is if some sort of catastrophic failure happened with the forming. So if we had a really high wall, we're pouring a concrete stem wall, a foundation, and we didn't have it shorn up properly, we didn't do enough to solidify the forming, you might have a form give way and then lose a bunch of concrete. Obviously, with the years of experience we are pretty good at making sure that doesn't happen. We know how much stress is going to be on these forms, and you know how much you have to shore that up and really make sure that you've got it as strongly built as possible to prevent any big blowout like that from happening. It has happened every once in a while. I'm trying to think. There was actually an episode of Working where we were pouring really high walls, and we had a corner where the corner of the form just burst and broke out. And we didn't lose too much. I caught it quickly, and then we were able to stop and shore everything up. Maybe I can put a clip in here if I remember. It was something where I was doing a further back time-lapse video of when we were pouring, and I think I even mentioned I put some subtitles on the screen showing that that's what was going on. It wasn't a huge deal. We were able to fix it. There was one thing that happened years ago when we were pouring, I think they're about 6-foot high walls, and we had a whole line of the metal cleats that go on the footing that hold the bottom of the forms together. A whole line of those just failed. So they actually bent over. It was just a bad box of cleats, and the entire bottom of our form came out, and it was a mess. We lost a ton of concrete. We had to stop. We had to shore everything up again. We had to try to shovel a lot of that concrete back into the wall. You really want to avoid that happening, and so you do as much as you can, as you possibly can, to prevent those things from happening. Anything else that might go wrong, I mean, you might be working on a private home that's worth $3 million, and you're putting in this foundation, a footing and a foundation. We're the first people on site usually, and we're putting down the basis for the entire build. So if our footing and our foundation are wrong, then that can cause huge problems for people later on. And so you really are just careful. You read the plans very carefully, you check and double check and triple check your measurements. There are setbacks, property lines, all sorts of things that you have to keep in mind. And just with experience, you try to prevent anything bad from happening. And we're pretty good. We usually don't screw up, at least not any major screw ups. Next, we have a question from Robert T. Skis. What kind of hammer do you use in concrete? What's your favorite brand? Hold that thought. I use a framing hammer, typically, usually with a waffle head, so you have a little bit of texture on the face of the hammer. I can't remember how many ounces this is. This has a fiberglass handle. I usually choose fiberglass because if I do a metal shank on the hammer, there's too much shock a lot of the times. Usually I'm not just hitting wood, I'm often hitting rocks or concrete or things like that. And if you have a metal shank, sometimes it's just really uncomfortable. So I usually use fiberglass. They last really well. I've had this hammer for years. I can't remember how many ounces this is. It's in the high 20s. I don't usually go for like a 32-ounce hammer. But it's pretty big, pretty burly hammer, and it is a Marshalltown, I believe is the brand. I typically have Marshalltown. It's just what I happen to find most of the time, and it's a good brand. Holds up really well. Like I said, I think I've had this hammer for, God, probably 8 or 9 years. So I don't have to replace my hammers all that often. Okay, next we have a question from Peter. Peter says, is there any job you wouldn't do for whatever reason, i.e. too hard, bad situation, etc.? It's an interesting question. Obviously, we're a small outfit. There is pretty much just my brother and myself actually doing the setup and the forming and the pouring. My dad used to do more back in the day, but he's to the point where he's kind of semi-retired. And, you know, concrete is tough work. It's not something that a 70-year-old person can do really easily. We have had periods in the past where we've had much larger jobs where we have gotten like actual crews that we have hired temporarily, and we have had other people doing work in the past for us. But typically we're a small outfit, and so we do jobs that are bigger than we should do, probably, for how large our crew is. We've got a lot of noise going on here. We've got a lot of people pulling into this area. For instance, we did that job recently where we poured all those steps in place, that very large installation of sand finish steps. And that should have had 4 or 5 people probably on that, but we did it with just the 2 of us. So we do jobs that are probably too large, but we are experienced enough and we know what we're doing enough that we can do those jobs. But if there's something that's just massive, you know, obviously some major industrial style job, we don't have a giant crew, so we can't do those kinds of jobs, and we wouldn't take those kinds of jobs. And then there's other situations where you just get a bad feeling. Like you might go look at something and it might be that the contractor just doesn't seem like they're the best kind of guy, or the homeowner, if it's for a private homeowner, you might just get a bad vibe or a bad feeling. It's kind of situation dependent. Usually we'll take a job if it's something we think we can do, and it would have to be a pretty unique situation where we look at someone and think, I don't want to work for you. We have had in the past, I'm remembering a time where we got called in. There was a different cement contractor who had poured the footing. Now, if you have been watching this channel, you should know that when you're making a foundation, first you do a footing, then you put the foundation on top of that footing, and the footing has all of our steel uprights in it, and then you form the foundation around, on top of that footing and around that steel. One time we got called in, and there was a contractor who said he had hired a different concrete company. They had come in and done the footing, and then they had just left. They abandoned the job before they did the foundation. So that seemed kind of weird, and we went over to take a look, and I started measuring up the footing, and I realized that the contractor who had done it first had made it, I think, 3 feet out of square. It was so poorly done that there was no way you could fit the foundation on top of it, which is why I think they just ran away. I think they poured that and realized that they really screwed it up. And we decided in that situation, this just isn't going to be worth our time to try to fix this. You would almost need to tear the entire thing out, just the way it was having to fit onto the site and with the setbacks and everything. So in that situation, we decided, nah, we're not going to do this job. It's pretty rare, though, that we say no. Okay, and finally, we have an interesting question. This is from @TTW3424. Construction guys have bad tempers. Have you ever had a fight on the job? I don't know that construction guys really do have bad tempers. It is interesting when I hear other people talking about their construction jobs in different parts of the country. I'm in the Pacific Northwest in Whatcom County, Washington. People here are pretty nice. Like, pretty much everyone that I come into contact with throughout the course of doing construction is really friendly and really nice. And people aren't typically screaming or yelling or swearing at me. That's just not something I see. And I hear these horror stories of construction people being really ill-tempered, being racist, being prejudiced, all these different things. I don't know, maybe it's just different in the Pacific Northwest, but everyone here is really nice. I've never noticed any racism. I've never noticed any, well, I will mention a couple situations here in a minute where people have been jerks, but for the most part, yeah, people are nice. I think maybe it is just partially to do with this region. I think people are maybe more laid back, or I don't know, not as high strung. I don't know. There have been a couple situations where there's just a jerk. We don't have to work with other people very often. You know, we'll have our contractors that we're doing the work for a lot of the times. We'll be the subcontractor. They call us in to do concrete work. And so you have relationships with the general contractor or the homeowner or whoever the client is. Usually those situations are fine. There have been a couple times where heads have butted together, maybe, but nothing too bad. There was a time I'm remembering where we were doing a really big job actually for a large company, a local company that does a lot of large apartment complexes. And we had done the footing and foundation for a large apartment complex. And we had already poured the concrete, I think, and we were trying to we had stripped forms from a large retaining wall that we had done on site. And when you're stripping forms, you're just pulling everything off, and then you come in later, you pick up all your hardware, you pick up all your forms, you scrape everything. And the excavator had come in, and he had started spreading hay all over our forms and our hardware and everything. And I came up to him and was like, hey, you know, we're trying to pull all our stuff out of here, and you're burying it all. You're making it so we can't find it or see it. And if you would just wait 3 hours, we would get all of our stuff out of here, and then you could spread hay. And he refused to wait, and he just kept spreading hay. He was using a big machine and just throwing it all over our stuff. And in that situation, it did get pretty heated. I'm a pretty calm, even-tempered person, and I was kind of flummoxed by just how much of an asshole this guy was being. I told him, you know, would you please stop that? He said no. He basically was rude right away. He was swearing at me right away. And it got to the point where, you know, he got out of his machine, words were exchanged, voices were raised. I might have threatened him a little bit, but it was because he was being threatening towards me, and we almost came to blows. He was, you know, at the time I was probably 30, and I was, you know, I'm 6'2", I'm in good shape. This guy was probably 60, late 50s maybe. He was obese, not in good shape, and he was basically trying to challenge me to a physical fight, which I don't think would have gone well for him in that situation. Anyway, it didn't come to blows, and it was funny because later on a couple of his guys from his crew came up to me, and they had hoped that I would have hit him. They were hoping I was going to hit their boss, because I guess he's a bit of a creep. So I think that's probably the worst situation. I've never actually gotten in a physical fight with anyone on a construction site. Like I said, I'm pretty calm, pretty reasonable person, and I don't typically try to start fights. You know, this is a job, it's a profession, and you want to act professionally. People will maybe be a little more short with each other on a construction site because it isn't in an office. You know, you don't have HR breathing down your neck all the time, and sometimes there's stress, sometimes there are really heated moments, and so you might, there have been times, I'm remembering now too, where maybe a concrete driver is being an idiot and messing things up, and I have to yell at them to correct their behavior. But typically things go pretty smoothly, and typically I don't think I've ever seen a physical fight on a construction site, which is good. You don't want to go to work and get in a fight with somebody. So yeah, for the most part, things go pretty smoothly. There is a lot of stress, tensions do raise, voices raise occasionally as well, but for the most part, things are okay. Well, hopefully that answered some of the pressing questions that you guys have. Please keep those coming in. I read all the comments on all the videos that I post. I try to answer a lot of them, you know, just as we go, as I post videos. But I will do this every once in a while where I'll pick out interesting comments and kind of save them for a question and answer episode every once in a while. And like I said, we are Contech Concrete Construction. I will put a link in the description box below, and I'm going to start including that in every episode because it kind of didn't make any sense that I wasn't doing that previously. So stay tuned. We have lots more good stuff coming up on the channel. Bi-weekly posting videos of concrete work. Like I said, we have that giant driveway that's coming up. We're gonna have a bunch of foundations. We're gonna have a really cool custom home coming up as well. So it should be a busy summer, but I think I actually remembered today. Got it. Thank you so much for watching. If you are just finishing a long, hard day of work yourself, have an ice-cold bottle of chocolate milk for me. This week, it is Edaline Dairy, my second favorite chocolate milk, also located in Linden, Washington. Amazing. Oh, that was another question I got. Do I drink chocolate milk every day? No, I don't. Don't worry. Chocolate milk is actually really great as a recovery drink if you've been working out. A lot of protein, some good fat in there. But no, I don't drink chocolate milk every day. I'll see you later.